I'll start with a broad question. Yorgos, what was it that drew you to this particular material?
I guess when I initially came across it, it was the fact that it was a story about these three women that in a particular point in time had this kind of power, but also their characters and their personalities and how that affected a whole country or the fate of thousands or millions of people. So it just felt like an interesting thing to explore.
And the comedy of it, you saw right away because it is a very dark-hearted comedy.
Yeah. I guess thinking about what would be the most interesting way to approach this. Well, I think humor in general is something that I can't get away from, no matter what the material is.
Please don't try.
So I guess, yeah, it was a given for me from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. We'll open it up to questions from the audience right now.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Ulker, and my question pretty much to everyone. The title of the film is a favorite, and I wonder, how did you everyone see what is the major favorite of the character, perhaps, or the story in this movie? Is it like Sarah is a favorite, or it is Anne, or it's a love, or it's a lie that is equivalent to love? Because there's more to the story, and perhaps you, Mr. Yorgos, get deep into this, of the favorite of this title and how everyone saw it.
That's a great big question.
Who's the favorite?
Everybody name their favorite character in the movie.
No, not just the favorite in terms of the title, but in terms of the way you saw the characters.
I guess the whole point is exactly what you're expressing, that we're looking for a favorite, or how the favorite functions within this world, and what it means and all that. So obviously, if we had a straightforward answer, we wouldn't make this film.
Maybe the screenwriter, Tony, if you could
Maybe
comment
you
on
know
that.
better.
I think it's what Yorgos said. I mean, it's a battle to be the favorite, and it's a battle to be our favorite. And, it's a court which is sort of a contained world, and so your power is sort of, I think Nick's character talks about favor is a sort of malleable thing, and it's a wind that comes and goes. So the idea of all these people being subject to trying to be the favourite and trying to be in favour, and even Anne trying to find someone she's the favourite of, and it just seemed an interesting dynamic to us for a film, and really complicated, and so yeah.
Firstly, thank you for a delicious film. It was enjoyable on so many levels, very smart, very acerbic, very funny. The question I have, and it's just something that's stuck in my mind because it kind of works as a visual metaphor for the film itself. How did you work on a set with that many rabbits running around? I mean, it's an amazing textural detail, and many productions would have just make them CG. It's easier. But you're dealing with a court, you're dealing with constantly shifting variables, and you've got this perfect representation of it. But how did that affect, specifically Ms. Stone, Ms. Coleman, and Mr. Lanthimos, on the days that you had to deal with the rabbits? I mean, like, was this like messing with you?
Olivia?
CG rabbits wouldn't have been the same. It was. I think it was fine, was it? But then I wasn't the one having to sort out any continuity. But it was lovely. Em and I are both mad animal lovers, so we had a lovely time. We could barely remember our lines on a day when it was a rabbit day. And to try and keep them in the corner, because those rooms were vast. So there was a sort of a pen with lots of people holding up bits of cardboard to keep them in the camera bit of the room. I didn't see it as a problem, but then I wasn't the one having to sort anything out. I loved it.
No, actually, it was quite, I was surprised, but it was very simple. They just fell into place most of the times. The only thing we had to do, as Olivia said, was just to restrict where they were, because they were huge rooms. But I thought it was going to be a nightmare, like it usually is with animals, but they just seemed to, enjoying themselves, just hanging out, and it all fell into place.
That's, Emma has a remark
duck,
about the
the
duck.
duck was
Yeah.
more difficult to maneuver.
And also,
The
rabbits
ducks
aren't
were-
house trained. They pee a lot.
Yeah.
So in that bed,
Shit
you kept
as
going,
well.
ooh, I can feel a wet patch. Ooh, they're all weeing.
Yep, right there.
Hi, I was wondering if you could talk about the decision of using wide angles for the movie. We haven't seen it a lot in this kind of genre, and I wanted to know what was behind it.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a couple of things, I guess. First of all, it's a personal preference that I've been developing over the last few years and the last few films. But especially on this film, I think we went even more extreme, because we felt that it kind of, in a certain way, it kind of visually represented a lot of the themes of the film, the lone human figures within those huge spaces, the fact that so few people actually affect a much vaster world. The fact that although the spaces were huge, they were kind of distorted and felt quite claustrophobic at the same time. So there were a lot of things that made it seem as the right thing. And another thing was, like, I kind of remembered those Dutch paintings that were dated even, in earlier centuries, that had those convex mirrors painted in them, and you could see the whole space reflected, distorted in those mirrors, and so it also felt appropriately period in a way.
That brings up the question of, I'd like to hear from the actors about their reactions to seeing the finished film, because making the film would be one thing, but seeing it as a finished product, something very different. Emma, do you want to?
Tell us how much you love the film.
I do love it.
There we go.
I love it. I really love it. No, I did love it so much. But I also am a little, I love being obnoxious on set, figuring out what lenses they're using pretty consistently. So I knew what lenses were used throughout the movie. I just didn't know how it was all going to be pieced together. So it was pretty startling to see that much sort of wide angle. But I knew that pretty much every master was going to be in that wide angle. So it was fun to and the music and the way, and the chapters. The chapters weren't originally there. That was new, and it was fascinating. Yeah.
Nicholas and Joe or Olivia. Yeah.
I loved it. It's brilliant. No, you know what? From reading the script and being there on the days that we were there, you could sense this, insane world that the characters were a part of, and the madness of that. But what I found really powerful was the things that I wasn't there to see being filmed, and these three leading ladies' performances, which were actually very tragic and heartbreaking in amongst that, and how sad it was, and the emotion that came from that. So that was the big takeaway from me, because that was something that I wasn't witness to on set.
I loved it too. Yeah, like Em said, and Nick, I was aware when you're there, I knew Yorgos was using these kind of fisheye lenses, but didn't really get the full impression of what that was going to look like until obviously I saw it. So I knew he was creating a slightly skewed vision, but there was obviously no looking at the monitor or nothing like that. So until I saw it on the screen and with these chapters and with the music, it was all new to me.
I had no idea what lenses they were using. So I watched them and wow, cool. Yeah.
Do somebody in the back? Anybody? Yeah, all the way in the back. No? No, that was actually Eugene Hernandez sticking up his hand to film. Yeah, right there. Right there.
Question for Emma Stone and Yorgos Lanthimos. I wondered how much the history of the film mattered to you, and if you had any sort of historical preparation. Was it like, did it really matter that this is an 18th century drama? Or was it just a story between three people? I thought, I mean, it was historically very well situated, but I wondered in directing and Emma Stone in acting if it mattered to you.
Why just me?
Well, because the historical character that you play is pretty unique. I mean, obviously all the actors can answer, but the historical character that you play is pretty unique. And yes.
Well, I mean, I was the only American in the cast, and so that I didn't really, probably know the extent of British history. I would think that you guys know, or no, they don't know either. So, yeah, no, I mean, I did a bit of research. I read about Sarah and Queen Anne and the little that you can find about Abigail, but the nature of their relationship wasn't really completely understood, and so I just sort of went with whatever they said.
Yeah, trust us, it's true, it's all true. No, but the reality was that we, the historical aspect of it and the whatever facts or we knew or are assumed about the period, we took them as a starting point, and then we were just interested in creating this particular world and this story around these three women, and not be necessarily loyal to the specific events or the specific politics of the time. We tried to actually simplify that part of it. So we would focus more on the characters, and through them understand in a way that it's relevant to any period how people in such positions, according to their character, behavior, mood, can actually affect very important events in history. So we focused on whatever we thought was necessary and interesting for us to tell that kind of story, and then we veered off in many different directions from there.
That dance routine was a little kind of Dancing with the Stars like. What made you choose that style?
Should I? Yeah. Well, I guess it was one. We tried to use quite a few contemporary elements in the film. One of them was dance and the physicality in general of the characters and the actors. But we just felt like sometimes in subtle ways, sometimes not so much, that we would incorporate textures that felt more contemporary, starting even with the language from the script stage. We didn't try and make the people sound the way we thought they sounded like back then, or the way we assume they spoke. So from making that decision, using more contemporary language, the dance, the costumes, that we tried to stay loyal to the shapes of the period, but then used quite a few contemporary fabrics and textures, to music that is sometimes true to the period and sometimes quite contemporary. So there were all these elements that we were using to add a more contemporary texture to the film.
Thank you.
I'd actually like to hear more about the costumes, because they're visually striking, but also seem very desperately to inform the character. Do we have the costumer here? Yeah. That's super exciting.
All right.
Sorry, could you repeat the bit about what do you want me to?
honestly, I'd love to hear anything about the costumes, but the costumes are so visually full of details and seem to inform the characters so lovely that I'd like to kind of hear about how that came about, and then from the actor's perspective, how it informed your performance to be in those costumes.
Strangely, the costumes don't have a great deal of detail. For that period, it's a lot more elaborate looking period, and due to sort of financial and time restrictions, I decided to strip all that back, and also sort of for the style of the film. So what the costumes are really, basically they're historically correct for the cut. Then, as Yorgos mentioned before, I used contemporary fabrics, I used things like African print fabrics that you probably don't notice, and stripped away all the decoration and sort of made it the bare bones. And in terms of how they work with the characters, I don't know, that just happens with the actors during fittings. Sort of characters come from what we're doing during fittings, don't they? Actors?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I had never worn a corset before, and I think that added, I mean, other than, you know, what I've said about it's harder to breathe, it also does inform you to the time period, the kind of restriction on women, you know, needing to lace yourself into that, and that you have to stand in a certain way and walk in a certain way in order to be able to stay upright, really, was a pretty, I felt like that was helpful. You know, and as we moved up, also, Sandy's costumes, my first costume was denim. It was like salvage denim, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, all the costumes in the kitchen, all the kitchen staff were made from old jeans. Like all the women's corsets
Which was
were
so
old jeans
cool,
cut
and there
up.
was so much leather. There was a lot of laser cut leather, like in the, you know, and so there were these really contemporary fabrics. But as we moved up, and all in it, you know, in the black and white, basically for the most part, and how it got so elaborate, and the hair pieces and everything. I don't know. I thought it was, and I don't know if that's just especially for Abigail, because it's so defined. My, you know, rise is so defined by what she's wearing. Yeah, I thought it was incredibly helpful.
And I didn't have to wear tight corsets, which was very nice. So, and often I was in a nightie for a lot of the time.
Olivia's costume, yeah.
Which was brilliant. But the bulk of it then, with the ceremonial costumes, the weight of those costumes really helps to inform how awful it must have been to stand still for any length of time and, you know, carry around a few extra stone of fabric.
But that's just for the ceremonial. Ceremonial runs are always like that. And
But
I think
yes,
that's
the
the
big
same now.
velvet dressing gown and nighties, I had the best. I felt very sorry for them turning up, not really being able to breathe. I was fine and eating cake and having a lovely time.
Sandy Powell, everybody.
My question is for Olivia. I was just wondering, because your character is sort of like an overgrown teenager in a way, and and I was just wondering, like, what was your process in developing that character?
I don't really have a process. Maybe I'm just like a big overgrown teen. It's just enormously fun. And then when you get that script and Yorgos, you know, says, kind of do whatever you want. So yeah, no process, I'm afraid.
We had a rehearsal period. You can
Oh, I'm
talk about
so
that.
sorry, we did. Yeah, there was a lot of process involved and a lot of rehearsal. So sorry. No, we did.
Which was very silly, but we did do that.
Oh, no, that's true. Yes, we did all of that. Sorry, you should always ask Yorgos. Don't ask me any questions.
Yes.
Hi, this is a question for Yorgos and the screenwriter and anyone else who'd like to chime in. What scene would you say is the emotional center of the film? And especially for the actors, what was it like to shake this film off emotionally?
Tony?
The emotional center of the film. Good Lord.
This is what I have to deal with.
I don't really know. I think, in a way, maybe it's when I'm sort of randomly. We didn't really focus on one, but if I think that moment when Anne sees the kids playing their instruments and drifts away from Abigail, and that leads into the dance, and that connects them in a much bigger way, but it also shows a sort of deeper sense of Anne's tragedy and sort of how mentally sort of unstable she is at times. That's a kind of key scene, I suppose, for me anyway, in writing it. That is all.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have answered that question because I think, you know, making a film, and especially with 3 main characters, it has such a journey and is such a process, and it depends for every different person how they experience the film and how they engage with it. And so I think it is and should be a different thing for each person, and I wouldn't really know.
Then the other part of the question was how the actors let go of playing these characters, and I would imagine that for every actor, that's a very different kind of answer. Just to do with your...
We just did. Yeah. We just let it go. Except for the thing was, I mean, at least for me, we'd spent so much time together. We all spent so much time together that I was incredibly sad when it was over, because I just wanted to be with everybody still.
I did feel genuinely quite bereft at the end of the filming. Well, I think we are probably going to be friends for life. I know people say that a lot, but I think it's probably bollocks a lot of the time. But we really did have a genuinely lovely time, didn't we? In fact, Yorgos sort of set that up, I suppose, because those weeks of rehearsal and playing meant we got to see. I'm recovering now. I'm pulling it back. Did mean that we could all be unembarrassed in front of each other and play and become really good friends, which was lovely.
Nicholas and Joe, do you want to chime in?
In terms of finishing, I mean, it didn't feel like it wasn't a big kind of an emotional part to cleanse myself of at the end. It was just sad finishing. It was such a fun shoot to be a part of with such an amazing, brilliant group of people, and such a refreshing, different project to what I normally read or do. I just had so much fun, so it was just sad letting go.
Yeah, I agree with that. The process was so different to what I'd experienced in terms of the rehearsal period, even right from the audition actually with Yorgos. I was like, this is bizarre. And it carried on throughout the whole filming in a great way. So yeah, we all got to know each other really well. We'd dance every morning and get into tangles with each other and all sorts of weird things that, like, it just makes you, very fast friends and very close friends in a brilliant way. So, and in terms of the character, I do want to go back to the costumes very quickly, because Sandy would very kindly teach me to walk in heels, which was very difficult, and that was probably the most perilous thing for me. I'm not very good at that.
What was the bizarre part of the audition?
Well, there was a scene that I was didn't really know that well, and then Yorgos would ask me to hum whilst the person I was reading with would say their lines, and then I had to imagine imaginary force fields around the room and like sculpt them and things, and sculpt the person I was reading with, but not let it affect how I would do. It was one of those ones where you walked out and you were like, I did everything, and I don't know if they're just laughing at me, but and not let it affect how you say the dialogue as well. And there were lots of games like that through rehearsals as well, which is I'm not sure entirely how it affects the performance. You can maybe shed more light.
I have no idea. I'm just doing whatever comes to my head.
I was just asking him if I could tell about my audition, because I auditioned for Yorgos, and he had me breathe, like pant, like I was giving birth, just throughout the lines. And then there were times where I would just like take pauses in the wrong place. I think he just does this to everyone.
Yeah. Not the birth part.
That was exclusively me.
One more question. Yep, right here. Yeah, just.
Thanks, everyone. So my question is, first for the screenwriter, and how you two worked together and the involvement that the actors had. Was there any improvisation? Did you stick close to the script? How did that evolve? Thank you.
How did we work together? We have a lot of lunches. Most of our work is done over lunch, at the end of lunch. don't know. I mean, over coffee we do notes and talk, but we just talk about, like, I live in Australia, and so I would, we would do Skypes, or I would come to London and we would just spend a week or two having lunch and walking around and talking about the script. And
Rome.
then we went to Rome for a week and we wandered around and had lunch and talked about the script for another week, and then I would deliver drafts, and then we would just go through them. And it was sort of like, I think we knew, it was always, we were on the same page very fast when we first talked about it, and we sort of always sort of knew where we were heading, and with this tragic comedy and very complicated characters that we were driving towards. And it doesn't feel like work. We mostly seem to be just eating, and then a few weeks later there's a script. And then we plan our next lunch. So we worked like that, really. And then once Yorgos is happy with the script, he's pretty solid with the script. Not much changes once we have we're like, this is good, this is good, this is good. But, you guys can talk more about that.
No, I guess we were around during rehearsals as well, and we saw how certain things work or don't, and we changed a couple of things. But other than that, I mean, when we felt that the script has a very particular tone, so when you think you get it right, you feel that it's right, you just try to go with it, and I think it helps the actors as well. And any kind of improvisation was mostly physical, or the way we staged the scenes, and maybe we added a couple of lines here and there, like there's that scene where you scream at the at that lovely little page, and as the scene unfolds, you go, we might go like, why don't you add that, but not much other than that, I think. But yeah, it's all about figuring out how the scene is set up, and how you can change it in order to make it work better. Because you might have thought something different, but it doesn't really work the same way when you're actually there and going through it.
That's all the time we have. I want to thank you for making such a terrific movie for us to open with. Thank you, everybody.